Alright, so just in case you guys are wondering what a tide pool is a pocket of salt water that is left in like a groove or a gouge in a rock as the tide goes out. And so inside tide pools you can find a various number of living organisms. And so in this little short video I'm just going to go around and show you some of the things that you can find in some of the tide pools here. The first animal that I'm going to show you is the Atlantic rock barnacle. And before I actually came to Maine, I never really knew what a barnacle was. But now that I've been studying tide pools a little bit more, the barnacle is a crustacean like a crab or a shrimp. And how it eats is it ejects these kind of tendrils that have a little reddish tint to them. And they look almost like a fern or like a palm frond. And it literally sweeps it through the salt water and picks out plankton, which it uses to eat. Okay, so all along these rocks, these little white dots, these are all barnacle. And there's definitely no shortage of them here. Alright, so the next animal that I'm going to show you is called the blue mussel. They're pretty commonly found in these tide zones and intertidal areas all around Maine. There's a little bed of mussels down in this little crack in this rock. So, a blue mussel, like any other shellfish, is a filter feeder. And they filter out the toxins in the ocean. So they're basically the detoxifiers. So the next thing I'm going to show you is called red tide. And you can probably see inside this tide pool is all the little red blotches on the rock, which is actually an algae with a red pigmentation to give it, and it makes it look like the water is actually red. Alright, and so second to one of the rock barnacle, the most common animal in these tide zones is the periwinkle snail. And I mean there are thousands of them. And they're just everywhere. And you could probably just look. You can see them all mixed in with the barnacles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, too many to count. And so they're very, very common snails. And there's also another kind of snail that lives around here called the dog whelk. And there are a few other ones, but those are the two most common ones. So like the periwinkle, there are a few other snails that live around Maine, and one of them is the dog whelk. And here's one right now. They're a little bit bigger than periwinkles, just to show you. Here's a pretty good sized periwinkle. And there's the dog whelk. Alright, so this next animal is probably one of my favorites that I've ever found in these tide pools, and that's the green crab. This crab is fairly small, maybe about ½ an inch across the shell. And they grow much bigger than this. I think the maximum that they grow to is about 5 inches across the shell. And these guys are really cool. You can find them a lot under the rocks in tide pools. And their main predator is the seagull. So that's what they're trying to avoid while hiding under the rocks. Keep going with the crab. I overturn this rock, and there's a much bigger crab under this one. This one, I'm pretty sure, is also a green crab. Alright, so we're just going to let him go. Put some rocks up on top. Cheers. Tide pools are very cool in the way that they have their own kind of separate ecosystem and own separate kind of food chain, meaning that since that bigger animals from the ocean can't really get to some of the tide pools, so the barnacle might be at the bottom, and the barnacle, it eats plankton, and so the starfish might come along and eat that barnacle. So that's the next level up. And then a seagull might come and eat that starfish. And the seagulls, I've actually noticed, are basically the top predator for most tide pools. They eat sea stars, they eat sea urchins, and they eat crabs. So it's just kind of interesting how tide pools, even though they're part of the ocean, have their own separate kind of isolated ecosystems and food chain. After looking around on the beach for about 30 minutes, I'm pretty confident that I covered most of the stuff you might find in the tidal pools and tidal zones. But I hope this video has helped to inform you about the species of life that live and grow in the tidal zones and coastal waters of Maine. Thank you.